Hello again.
I'm Brian.
Brian and Kevin.
The Horror Guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Did you watch any horror movies this week?
Oh, yeah, we did. We watched a bunch of good stuff.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, this time we're going to talk about...
Dementia 13, an oldie.
What does the 13 mean?
They just wanted to distinguish.
There was another film called Dementia.
And so they said, well, 13's a cool number. We'll just tack that on the end.
Yeah, it's a scary number. So what's worse than Dementia?
Dementia 13.
And then we're going to have Phantasm IV, Oblivion.
Where they wrap up the series.
No, they don't.
Okay.
They probably should have.
Yeah, they made a fifth one.
Yeah, there's five Phantasms. And how many Dead Ringers are there?
Just one.
But there's twins.
But there's two guys.
Kind of two in one.
Yes.
Dead Ringers from 1988. And lastly, The Empty Man from 2011. That's not right. That's a brand new film. It's 2020. I've got a typo here.
2020.
Yeah, no, it's our new film for the week.
It's way new.
2020.
Yes.
All right, before we get into that, we've got some news stuff.
We do?
News item number 1.
Yes.
We now have an all-new weekly email that contains all our reviews from the site, plus bonus material. Over the coming weeks, we'll be beefing up the bonus material quite a lot. There's just so much stuff to review. So every week, you get the 4 movies and a short that we talk about on the website and the podcast. That stuff's the basics. But then, there's 2, or maybe more, bonus films that are only available by email.
What a deal.
Recent bonus reviews include Halloween 2. Probably one of the best sequels ever, don't you think?
I think so, yeah.
Maybe not the absolute best, but it's certainly in the top 10 of sequels. 1979's Dracula. Frank Langella was once Dracula.
Huh.
And he's like the smoothest Dracula ever.
Yeah, he was.
Just for fun, we did Giantess Attack versus Mecha Fembot.
No, that's one I did not see.
That was crazy. That was every bit as fun as it sounds.
That was during a virtual film festival.
Yeah, it was,
and
yes.
I needed to sleep for work and preparation for work, and Brian watched that one.
A sci-fi horror thing called Trends from 2020. It's been a while. I think it was Japanese. I'm not sure what country that was from now. One of the Asian countries.
Another one that I did not see.
How these people get all cyborged up and become transhuman.
Transhuman.
And The Wicked Ones.
From Transylvania, driving Trans Ams.
No, you're thinking Rocky Horror. That's a different thing.
All right.
We got to do that one of these days. And The Wicked Ones from 2020. So if any of those films sound good, head on over to horrorbulletin.substack.com. The old special edition stuff is still there. You can read those reviews. And, of course, while you're there, sign up for the next batch. horrorbulletin.substack.com. Or go to the website, upper right-hand corner. Just fill in your email there and spam-free, just the reviews. And a second news item.
Yeah?
We have a new book out. The Horror Guy's Guide to the Horror Films of Vincent Price is available for pre-order now. Find a link in the show notes, and it covers every single one of Price's horror films.
And he did a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah, he did. And several other significant films that weren't horror. There's more than 50 films covered.
Dang.
So, yeah. We've done, I don't know, maybe since we started 3 years ago, we've done maybe 12 of Vincent Price films. He's done more than 50.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did 43 that I would consider horror. Mm-hmm. Out of a filmography of 200-plus movies.
He was a busy feller.
Yeah, he did
quite
a lot of romantic leading men when he was young.
Commercials and shorts and
other
projects and stuff. I mean, that's just the movies.
I think maybe the first time I saw him, it was on the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, lots of television things, and a lot of times he would satire himself as the horror icon.
I think almost all his films after 1960, he was sort of satirizing himself.
Well, in television appearances, he would do that.
Yeah. But playing himself on The Muppet Show.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So one of my I'll go further. I'll say he is my favorite horror icon.
Yeah, I think he's mine too.
You got a lot of old timers that really invented horror, and he perfected horror humor. I think.
Yeah,
he made it
so.
fun. All right. So this week we've got some movies. is
Dementia 13, for
Dementia
instance.
13.
Why don't I read Brian's synopsis notes about
don't you?
Dementia 13, and we'll tell you all about it. Now, first, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
The
Some of his
Godfather. This is not the Godfather of horror.
early work, very early work. Was it his first? Wasn't his first.
I don't know.
No,
but it may have been.
Way back there, yeah. Written by Francis Ford Coppola and Jack Hill. Stars William Campbell, Luna Anders, Bart Patton. Reading is hard. These names are hard. Okay, runtime, 1 hour and 15 minutes.
William Campbell, the only thing I remember, I know he was fairly big in the 60s. The only thing I really remember him from was a couple different episodes of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
He was the Klingon commander in the Tribble episode.
Oh, yeah.
And he was also the Squire of Gothos, Trelane, in that other episode.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And then did this.
Who was probably a Q, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's the fan theory.
But actually, this film came before Star Trek, so
yeah, it did.
I'm sure he did other things.
And this full film was actually available on YouTube for watching for free.
One of those public domain films, I don't know why, but the copyright ran out years ago.
Black and white, yeah. Well, the spoiler-free judgment zone, a tale of death, inheritance, murder, conspiracy, insanity, and maybe a ghost.
Maybe.
It's short, creepy, and quite good.
Yeah, what's the runtime?
1 hour 15.
Okay, that's short.
Yeah. Synopsis. A man and a woman walk out onto the dock. They get in a small rowboat and take a little radio with them.
Okay, now this is weird to begin with. He's wearing a full suit, and she's wearing some kind of semi-formal dress.
They're very well dressed for going out rowing on the lake.
They go out on this isolated lake in a rowboat and playing a radio because why? Just because he wants to.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. Well, people dressed better in the 60s, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out and row my boat. Let me get my tie straight.
Yeah. Well, Louise wants John to talk to his mother about changing her will. His mother wants to leave the fortune to some charity instead of them. She thinks John is rowing too hard for his bad heart. He laughs and says, "If I die before Mother, you're a stranger. If I die, there's nothing in it for you."
And guess what?
He kills over dead.
Timing.
So she tries a little damage control. Seeing her meal ticket dead, she gets rid of the body by rolling him overboard. And she throws the annoying radio in after him. And then credits roll.
That escalated quickly.
Well, Louise gets in the car. She writes a letter to John's mother where he explains that he needed to get to New York for business, and he doesn't know when he'll be back. She forges his signature, and then she packs up his clothes and other things he would have taken, including his typewriter. And she thinks she can get her to change the will. And anyway, she throws the suitcase and the typewriter in the lake. So she's covering up his death. No, he's just out of town. Billy explains about his sister Kathleen. So there's 4 siblings. One is dead, the sister Kathleen, who died long ago. She drowned in a small pond, and supposedly she still haunts the house. Well, they go to Castle Halloran, where she meets Richard, the artist brother. Old Lady Halloran wonders how long Louise will be staying with them. Until John returns, she explains.
Could be a while.
Yeah, well, yeah. Richard is annoyed with his mother's obsession with Kathleen. He wants to marry Cain. His mother doesn't like Cain. He doesn't care. He doesn't care much for Louise. So there's a lot of disliking going on. They're all living in this house and a lot of disliking. So Billy explains to Cain about how Kathleen was missing all night before they found her body. And we had some confusion between Cain and Louise.
Louise and Cain look a lot alike.
Their demographic is really similar, and blonde and long hair. And
yeah, they're
we got them confused
similar.
at first.
I'm like, why are they picking up Louise from the airport?
Yeah, and why is
Cain.
Richard kissing Louise, John's wife? No, that's Cain. Okay,
yeah. Look closely. They look very similar.
Yeah. Well, every year they recreate the funeral ceremony out of tradition, and they run into Simon the Poacher, who runs off. So there's another character thrown in there. Well, Richard, Billy, and Mother do the funeral routine as they do every year.
Which is a little on the morbid side.
Yeah. And
they don't visit the grave. They have a whole nother funeral.
Oh, yeah. They have the whole ceremony. And Mother faints at the same time every year out of tradition, too. They talked about it ahead of time, and I thought he was being, pulling her leg. No, Mother faints right on cue.
And they call a doctor and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Louise helps her out to get on her good side. And Louise tells Mother that she hears things at night. Maybe it's Kathleen. So Louise is already starting to work on the mother and
weasel
her way in. Well, that night, Louise steals some things and toys out of Kathleen's room, which hasn't been touched in years. They kept it just like it was when she died. Well, someone sees her come out. She ties the toys together with cord and coats the cord in something. And we were thinking, yeah, that's like a slow-dissolving acid or something. And she takes them to the bottom of the pond, and she weights them down there. She sees a grave down there and freaks out.
Why is there a grave in the bottom of the
pond?
pond?
Why is there a grave? Yeah, it's a tombstone. And she tries to get out of the pond. Someone kills her with an axe.
Well,
so that was abrupt and unexpected.
And she was obviously the main character up to this point.
And not anymore. Yeah. Well, Mother's doctor, Caleb, thinks repeating the funeral every year is nonsensical, and her fainting has to be purely psychological. And he's kind of a jerk, the doctor.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Mother calls for Louise, but the maid says she didn't sleep in her bed last night. Well, they all have a luncheon out on the terrace, but Louise doesn't show up, which annoys Mother. They all see bubbles in the pond, and then the toys float to the surface.
Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Billy has a flashback about playing with Kathleen, and of course Mother freaks out. And, Simon, the poacher, is out hunting that night and finds
the timing on those floating toys.
Oh, that was perfect timing.
Is
Yeah,
too perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just impossible. But,
yeah.
Okay, there.
But
it
it
is.
worked. Yeah, Louise is after the fact. She's already dead, but it worked. Freaking out Mother and. While Simon the poacher is out hunting that night, he finds Louise's body. He gets beheaded by someone. Oops. Yeah. So the groundskeeper's not the killer.
Nope.
No, that's the poacher, Simon the poacher. Arthur, the groundskeeper, could still be a suspect. He starts to drain the pond, but it'll take some time. Mother is cracking up more and more. She goes to put her diamond tiara in Kathleen's old playhouse, and while she's in there, someone with an axe tries to cut through the wall, which further freaks her out, of course. She runs away, but passes out in the courtyard. Faints again. Good thing the doctor's there, though.
She faints a lot.
Yeah, she faints easy, yeah. Billy tells Cain about his recurring dream of Richard climbing up the wall into his room. Well, Arthur finishes draining the pond, and he finds something. They all go to see what it's about. It's a tombstone that reads, "Forgive me, Kathleen."
Ooh.
Yeah. Richard used to work in stone. Caleb blames him. Caleb thinks Louise has been trying to steal things, and maybe she's hiding in town.
And Caleb is the doctor.
Yes, Dr.
The
Caleb.
psychiatrist who is still around and just nosing into everything.
Yeah. Kind of a guest of sorts. Well, the next night, Cain follows Richard down into the castle dungeon where he used to work on his sculptures. He explains that he came down there to find out who made that monument. He denies it was him. Caleb confronts Billy, and he says he knows that Billy pushed Kathleen into the pond. He asks Billy what happened to Louise, and Billy answers with a nursery rhyme. Kind of nonsensical, but that Caleb seems to think that means something. Richard and Cain are married. Caleb tells Cain that he's going to get to the bottom of the whole affair with this messed up family. He says Cain may be in danger, and she thinks he's crazy. So Richard and Cain go out for a literal roll in the hay, and Caleb goes out for a smoke. He realizes where Louise's body is and finds it. He also finds the Kathleen doll that the killer has been moving around. He puts the doll on the fountain, and everyone comes out.
And we weren't sure for a while
for
if
the
that
big
was
reveal.
a doll or the real dead Kathleen.
Or the real dead, yeah. It was a doll, life-sized, yeah. Well, Cain reaches for the doll, and Billy charges her with his axe. And we get the full flashback of Billy throwing Kathleen into the pond. He was the killer all along. Someone shoots Billy, and he dies. The doctor's the hero. Happy ending.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
It was Billy all along.
Well, the commentary. Want me to read that for you?
Sure.
Yeah. Billy's flashbacks make it pretty obvious that he pushed Kathleen into the pond.
Yeah, I mean, we almost see him do it. I mean, you
Yeah.
see the two of them wrestling right next to the pond. It's obvious what happened, fairly early on.
Yeah, and it's clear that he's unbalanced. But this film doesn't focus on that, and it made it seem likely that he was the killer, but uncertain enough that you kind of guessed. So I thought that was,
it looked obviously like he was, but they put enough doubt on other people that you kind of wondered.
And they were all kind of weird, and they try to imply it was Richard, but that didn't seem likely. Here's
Richard seemed like the normal one through the whole movie. I mean, why would it be him?
Yeah, but that could have been,
just a disguise.
Here's a comment that Louise and Kane were very similar looking in the first few scenes. They were kind of confusing, And Louise was, supposed to be the main character, and then not abruptly, and then Kane took over. So it was a little weird overall.
It was.
Very
I wonder
different.
What the deal with that was. If there was something behind the scenes, like, let's get this woman who looks identical to the first woman to play a second woman in the second half.
I think that was part of it to confuse the audience, and then the doll too.
Yeah.
So there was really 3 of them that looked very similar, where you didn't know who was alive and who was dead and who was So all in all, very skillfully done. I was impressed. I was really pleasantly surprised by it.
And it was definitely good.
Yeah.
It's no Godfather, but Francis Ford Coppola got his start somewhere. May have been here. So, one that Kevin chose for this week is Dead Ringers from 1988. Dead Ringers. Directed by
Twinsies.
David Cronenberg. I don't think I've ever seen anything from him that I didn't like.
He's
weird.
He's great. Yeah.
Written by David Cronenberg, Norman Snyder, and Barry Wood. Stars Jeremy Irons. Also Jeremy Irons. Genevieve Bujold and Heidi von Paleske. Hour and 56 minutes. Link for a trailer in the show notes.
And this was 1988, before they had much CGI and motion capture and a lot of technologies they have now.
Jeremy Irons
it was
played
very
both
skillfully
roles.
directed.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of body doubles and trick shots, and they did have a camera technique where he could be on the screen at the same time with himself. Yeah.
But no CGI.
No.
This is pre that.
Yeah.
All right, well, this is not horror in the least, except for maybe one good scene. But it is a fascinating psychological thriller that walks the line between drug addiction and just plain insanity.
Yeah.
I saw this when it came out, and I was pretty disappointed in it. Because,
I was impressed.
Oh, they were so playing up. It's a horror movie. There's a scare a minute. And really, there's not. It's a good movie. I like it. Now.
But it's not really horror.
It's not
It's
horror.
Pushing it to call it
very
horror.
Very vaguely, basically.
Yeah.
All right, well, way back in 1954, a pair of twins, little kids like 10 years old.
And those were real twins.
Yeah. Talk about what sex would be like if humans were fish. They then ask a neighbor girl to have sex with them in the bathtub to find out. She reacts poorly.
Yeah.
Then they go home and operate on a toy body. So they're weird from way back.
And already showing an interest in medical things.
Yeah, especially sex.
Yeah.
In 1967, the twins, Elliot and Beverly, are in medical school. The professor gets annoyed when they use a customized medical instrument that he didn't approve of. He said it'd be fine for cadavers, but it won't work on a living patient. Not long after, the school is praising them and giving them an award for inventing the new instrument, which has brought glory to the school.
The new industry standard. And
that'll never work.
Brilliant breakthrough.
Yeah, they are brilliant young surgeons.
Yes, they are.
So in 1988...
fertility specialists is what they
are.
end up being. Yeah.
In 1980, a few years later, one of the twins examines a woman named Claire and finds out that she has a couple of parts that aren't supposed to be there. She's a trifricate. She has 3 cervixes.
Say what?
Is that even a real thing?
It is.
You did. Okay, you looked it up. Kind of want to see a diagram to know what we're talking about. She's a famous actress in town for a miniseries. The 2 brothers switch on and off between seeing patients and doing social engagements. No one can tell the difference between them. Tonight, one of the brothers, Elliot, goes home with Claire. So yeah, one of them will work, one of them will go off and do a speech or a...
And they tend to switch back and forth, yeah.
Bev, the other brother, goes to Claire's house in the morning. He tells her that she can't ever bear children, and she's not surprised. Elliot is a bit of a playboy, while Bev is more bookish. You get the feeling as things go on that one does more of the brain work, and one of them does more of the social stuff after a while. It used to be evenly divided, now not so much. Bev goes to see Claire again, and this time they play doctor together. Later, Bev doesn't want to share Claire with Elliot. Elliot starts to rib Bev over their relationship. Claire offers Beverly amphetamines, but he says he never takes drugs. She does, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Elliot thinks she's just hustling for drugs, so he tells this to Bev. Claire thinks Bev has gotten suddenly schizophrenic, and she can't tell why. Well, because he's two people.
Yeah, they look identical, but there are subtle differences, sometimes not so subtle differences in their personalities. Yeah.
Sometimes she really likes him, and sometimes he's just a good lay. He distracts her with pills. Look, pills.
Look, Candyman.
Their friend Laura asks Claire about what she's been doing with those mental twins, which is new to Claire.
What?
Claire didn't know they were twins. Oh, that explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
She's very understandably creeped out.
And PO'd.
Yeah. Bev is evasive when she wants to meet his brother, but he finally agrees to a meeting between the three of them. Although it seems likely that she knows exactly what's been going on now that she knows there's twins.
Yeah, at this point she's figured it out.
They all meet, and oh yeah, she knows. It goes badly for all of them. Bev cries, Elliot laughs, and they obviously have different feelings for Claire. The two doctors cause a bit of a stir during an award ceremony that same evening. Elliot is fine, but Bev is very, very drunk and says way too much on stage. It's becoming clear that Bev is jealous of Elliot's success while he does all the real work. Whose success is it, really?
Well, it's theirs. Yeah.
Bev runs into Claire later on, and they do manage to make up. He has a dream that he and Elliot are conjoined, and she literally tears them apart with her teeth. There's one of the few horror scenes there.
One of his fears. Well, and they are so close. They share an apartment. They
they share
switch
everything,
switch roles.
They're really way too close.
Yeah, and historically, like one would bed a girl and then would come home and share all the details. So they could in anything that happened, they would always share the details, so they could interchange very easily.
Yeah. Well, Elliot hires twin escorts to play with. He doesn't quite seem all there anymore either. Bev starts getting the shakes during surgery, and he doesn't want to get up in the mornings. Drugs are starting to affect him. He's very clingy with Claire, but she has her own career. Claire has a talk with Elliot, and she tells him about Bev's problems. Elliot calls her a confusing element in the Mental Brothers saga.
Which is true, she is.
She stirred it up.
Yeah.
He tries to come on to her, but she doesn't want to go there with Elliot. Claire then goes away for 10 weeks to do a film shoot. Bev calls Claire sweet. Her secretary answers, and thinking Claire is cheating on him, he graphically explains to the guy on the phone that she has a mutant vagina. Elliot says, "What did you expect? She's a showbiz lady." Do all actresses have mutant vaginas? Well, maybe so. Before long, Elliot, Bev, and Elliot's girlfriend, Carrie, have a three-way dance, but Bev collapses and ends up in the hospital. Elliot knows it's the drugs, but Bev doubts that he's addicted. Oh, no, not me.
No.
Bev has to go back to the office and do procedures, but it becomes apparent that he's lost his touch. Elliot starts to wonder how messed up Bev really is. Bev goes to see Mr. Wallach, an artist who works in metal. Bev has drawings of new surgical instruments. He's designed gynecological equipment for mutant women. I'm sure there's a big demand for that.
It sounds like a rock band.
Gynecological equipment for mutant women in concert tonight. Well, he wants Wallach to build them for him, and Bev's office receptionist catches him shooting up in the office and quits. In surgery one day, Bev whips out the special instruments, and the assigning nurses are horrified. He freaks out and starts huffing the anesthetic during the surgery.
Yeah, that's quite a scene.
Yeah, that goes badly.
And that's the end of their medical career.
Elliot tries to do damage control, but they lose their surgical privileges at the hospital.
Yeah, basically, the deal
not gonna
is
press
we're
charges
not
if
going
they
to
never
press
come
charges or disbar you, but you don't ever do this. Yeah,
Not with
don't
our
ever
hospital.
practice again. Yeah.
Elliot didn't know about the special surgical equipment. Bev is cracking up, saying that none of the women are right inside anymore. He had to try something extreme. Elliot starts popping the pills because of the stress. Carrie warns Elliot that he should get someone else to help with Bev, as he's too close to the situation. Elliot acts like he's conjoined with Bev. Claire returns. Bev goes to see her, but he can barely walk now. He sees copies of his surgical designs at an art gallery. The metal crafter presented them as his own creation.
As an art display.
And
Yeah.
Bev steals several of them. He tells Claire that the tools are for separating Siamese twins. A week passes at Claire's house, and Elliot doesn't call or come looking for Bev, which is confusing. Bev seems to have sobered up a bit and goes looking for Elliot. Now he's the sober one.
Yeah. They've switched.
Bev returns, and their office is a disaster. Yes, Elliot's addicted now, too. They both get high as a kite and promise each other that they're going to get sober on Monday. The two of them decide that it's a good idea to separate the Siamese twins using the special tools. Uh-oh.
Yeah, indeed.
Bev sedates Elliot and then starts cutting. They start referring to each other as Cheng and Eng, the two most famous Siamese twins, as Elliot bleeds out on the table. Bev wakes up and mentions he's had the most horrible dream, but it wasn't a dream. Bev then cleans himself up, and dies too. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Tragic ending.
Well, and they've been talking about Chang and Eng throughout the story about these Siamese twins. This was back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. One of them died of a stroke or something like that, and the other one is supposed to have just died from fright.
That's how the story goes. Yeah.
So in this case here, Elliot bled out, and Bev just sort of died of fright. He couldn't live without him.
Mm-hmm. Cheng and Eng with modern medicine, I have read, could have been separated. Could be separated now if they were born now.
I don't. Yeah, I've
could
seen
be
pictures
separated.
of them. I don't know exactly what organs were where.
Not much organ sharing.
Oh, okay.
It was a connecting, tube of flesh, basically, connected at the tummies. Mm-hmm. But I've seen it said that with modern medical, that if they were born now, they'd be separated.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's really hard to tell where the insanity ends and the drug addiction begins. Those red operating gowns really stand out. If real surgeons wore those, having an operation would be a lot more fun. Yeah, the costumes in this are pretty outstanding, and I don't normally notice that in a non-horror movie, but they all look good.
Yeah.
Jeremy Irons plays both brothers, and the effect is done really well. This was an age before CGI, so it's all created with camera tricks, body doubles, and multiple takes. After a while, though, you can tell, only by body language and persona, which brother is on the screen at any point. It's a little confusing in the beginning, but you tell pretty quickly. Irons did a masterful acting job. Did he win any awards? He should have.
If not, he should have, but I don't think he did for this specifically. Yeah.
It's long, and it's not particularly horror, except for two brief body horror scenes. Still, it's very entertaining watching Bev spiral down further and further, and how it all resolves in the end. I like it, but I would have to say it's more of a psychological thriller than any kind of serious horror.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But it was always marketed as horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes they do that. I mean, if it's not horror, what would you call it?
A
It's
thriller.
certainly not a normal drama.
Psychological thriller.
It's a romance.
No, well,
A three-way romance.
Well, kind of a weird romance. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of weird, we've got an old short film this week, and I'll bet you've all seen it already. It's called Thriller from 1983.
Which is technically a horror short.
It really
With
is.
a
lot
really
more than you'd
with a
expect.
really good song.
I mean, most people know Michael Jackson's Thriller. They've heard the song on the radio or somewhere, but it's a heck of a music video.
Yeah, if you check out the full length music video.
13 minutes.
Yeah. It's more than just the song.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot more going on.
Yeah, if you
All
haven't,
I remember
if you haven't ever checked that out, you really should.
Yeah, it's available in full on YouTube. You can find it. Directed by John Landis, who did all kinds of movies in the 80s.
Yeah.
Written by John Landis and Michael Jackson. Stars Michael Jackson, Ola Ray, Forrest J. Ackerman, and a voice thing by Vincent Price.
You betcha.
Runtime 13 minutes. Okay, synopsis. What would you think?
What, the synopsis?
You like it?
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's fun and creepy. And, yeah.
A young man and his girlfriend are driving along, dressed in 1950s fashions, when they run out of gas. They start walking home through the woods, when he sees the full moon, changes into a werewolf, and chases the girl. Nope, it's just a movie. It's called a thriller.
And then it cuts to Michael Jackson and that same girl sitting in the movie theater.
Yes, being watched by Michael Jackson and his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. She is terrified by the film and wants to leave early. So they walk home past the graveyard, where they're surrounded by zombies. As the zombies rise out of their graves, from under manholes and other places, we hear the unmistakable voice of Vincent Price reading his lines. There's no singing. There's no dancing. This is all pure horror movie stuff up to this point. These zombies, though, don't want to eat brains. They want to dance. Zombie Michael obliges them with a song, and in the end, we hear the distinctive Vincent Price laugh. It's a long-standing rumor, although not confirmed, that the old man zombie at the very, very end of the closing credits is Price himself.
What do you think? Is it?
You can't tell. It's just an old man zombie. It might be, but I can't find any documentation anywhere that he ever admitted it. Mm-hmm. And from what I hear, he probably didn't get paid enough to put on a lot of makeup. Vincent Price was offered, I think, $20,000 to do his lines.
Or a percentage.
Or a percentage of the take. Oh, and he's like, it's a music video.
He chose poorly.
He chose very poorly. As far as I know, this may still be the most popular music video of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hadn't seen it in years, and all I remembered was the dancing. There was actually a lot of good horror material here, and the werewolf chase in the thriller was really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the zombie makeup on both Jackson and the dancer is top-notch and holds up really well today, even 38 years later. Does that make you feel old?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Of course, the song and the dance number have become legendary hits on their own. All right, so note that on the walls of the theater in the first segment are posters from Vincent Price films. The House of Wax and Mask of the Red Death can be seen on the walls. We also see on the marquee above the theater that the film they are watching is called Thriller, starring Vincent Price.
Very cool. Yeah.
And where would you read up more about Vincent Price, you ask?
Why, there's a
recent
a new
book about that.
A book that's going to be released
The
soon.
Horror Guy's Guide to the Horror Guy's Guide to the Horror Films of Vincent Price.
Nice segue there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier with the news, there's 43 movies and 7 or 8 non-horror movies, and this video. Some of his voiceover work is mentioned in there also.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably his most famous voiceover work. So, way back when, in the Dark Ages, we talked about the original Phantasm movie. Then, a week before last, we did Phantasm II. Last week, we did Phantasm III.
And now it's time for Phantasm IV. The progression of, that's all.
For Phantasm IV, Oblivion. And if you watch the titles come on the screen, Oblivion has the letters IV in the middle. Mm-hmm. Oblivion's got nothing to do with the story, except that it's got that IV in the middle to make
the credits looked cool that way.
Yeah. All right.
So this was the last one, right?
No.
It wasn't. They made one more.
So who's in this one?
Well, a lot of the same people.
Surprisingly.
Directed and written by Don Coscarelli again.
Yeah.
Stars A. Michael Baldwin.
From 1 and 3.
Yeah. Reggie Bannister.
From all of them.
And Bill Thornton.
I think he was in all of them.
Thornbury, yes. Same guy. An hour and a half. Runtime, an hour and a half. And there's a trailer on YouTube.
Yeah.
Go and check it out. Yeah. Well, the spoiler-free Judgment Zone. It feels like they had a lot of filler running into this one. They found a cache of unused film from when they filmed the original, and they must have used it all here.
It's like, we found these extra reels of stuff. What can we do with it? I don't know. Let's throw it in there somewhere.
So there's a few clips that you recognize from previous movies.
Yeah, and
but
you
also
can tell
some new
because the character
clips.
of Mike is still the kid. He's very young.
Yeah.
And Reggie has dark hair, and Jody isn't fat.
And we get an origin story for the tall man,
Yes.
which is nice. But the low budget shows.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does in this one. Yeah. Well, synopsis. Mike from the previous films drives a hearse and has flashbacks to previous films, as we mentioned. Lots of
Now, at the
flashback.
end of the previous film, he had the ball in his head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tall man had gotten to him, done some kind of procedure, and we see Mike has the silver ball inside his head now.
Yeah.
Okay, and he still does.
Yeah. Reggie gives a voiceover explaining how the tall man spreads like a plague, destroying whole towns in his path. He's not just an undertaker. He sends bodies to a place worse than hell. Mike is in the process of transforming into something like the tall man, but he ran off. Said, I don't want that, and ran away from him. So, the tall man unleashes hundreds of spheres outside.
Yes, we have reached the age of CGI.
The final game now begins, he says. Credits roll. Well, Mike has passed dozens of destroyed and abandoned towns. The tall man has wiped them clean of the living and the dead.
And at this point, there's so many empty towns. You'd think that, the
seems
military or something would be taking notice.
Somebody would have noticed by now, yeah.
Yeah, in the first couple movies, it was just this one old guy in a cemetery. Now it's gotten to be much larger.
A little bit, yeah. And in the second one, he's doing more towns. But this is like a whole swath of America.
Half the state has disappeared.
Yeah. Well, we get clips of more unused footage from the first film. Mike sees an old woman appear in the passenger seat and disappear. Jody, in his human form, comes to see Reggie. Jody wants Reg to follow Mike wherever he's going. Mike, on the other hand, is not driving the car, it's taking him somewhere. The car goes to Death Valley. On the road behind him, Reggie encounters some kind of undead cop. And, of course, there's a battle where Reg gets beat up and puked on, and yeah, he's got the worst luck of any heroic character.
He's always getting puked on, cut, beat up, or something.
Smashed around, and Mike wakes up in the desert. The car has died. He spots dwarves and lurkers in the hills, and he dreams of the tall man and has more flashbacks. He sees the Civil War, many dead bodies, and the tall man. He wakes up and sees a portal in the desert. Then he hangs himself, but the tall man is waiting for him. Doesn't let him get away that way. Yeah. A younger version of himself cuts Mike down from the tree. Wait, no, it's not Mike, it's the tall man up there. I'll go away, and I won't ever come back, he promises. Just cut me down.
At this point, you're starting to wonder, does Mike become the tall man at some point? Or is the tall man
I think that's
really
what they're
Mike?
leading to.
Yeah, they're kind of leading to that here.
And the tall man is manipulating him into becoming, Mike falls for it. Well, back in the real world, in the desert, the tall man says, "Come, boy, we have things to do." Mike almost gives in.
Mike's like 40 at this point, and the tall man still
calls him boy. Yeah.
Because it sounds cool.
It does. One Angus Scrim says that. Mike almost gives in, but changes his mind and goes through the portal again. Michael appears in the past. He sees a bunch of clockwork machinery powering a much more primitive version of the portal. And he's back at the Morningside Funeral Home from the first film. He spots the tall man sitting on the porch. Wait, it's not the tall man.
Looks like him, though.
It's Jebediah Morningside, a nice old guy who looks like the tall man.
Did you want some sweet tea?
Yeah, he offers him tea and, sit down and relax. And, we have so few visitors. And then you're dressed so strangely. Did you make passage through the dimensional door? I've been waiting for someone to come through. Mike goes back through the portal to the desert, which now has many portals. Mike finds that he has now developed telekinesis, which he uses to squash scorpions and some of the evil dwarves. Jody appears to him and explains how he wound up as a not-so-evil murder ball. Jody did, yeah. He can morph back and forth between the ball and kind of a human form. Mike starts ripping parts out of his car and building something with the bits. Yeah, he's doing his own engineering here. Well, Reggie rescues a girl from an exploding car on the road, so now he has a companion, Jennifer. Reggie
really needs to give up on the women.
yeah, he has terrible luck with them, too. Reggie tells all to her, and she's skeptical, to say the least. And then he wakes up, and he's in the cemetery, and he's attacked by the tall Mike. He's like dressed like the tall man. And he wakes up again next to Jennifer, and her boobs are getting jiggly.
What?
What? Well, they turn into spheres and attack him.
Chow for jiggly boob. That's never good.
He kills one with a
Is that a new
sledgehammer.
Pokemon?
Kills one with a sledgehammer and the other with a tuning fork. And Jennifer, who's not really a human at all, after all, gets the sledgehammer as well. So Reggie and his love life. Yeah. Well, Mike wants to go back to the past and stop Jebediah Morningside from completing his transition into the tall man. He gets a vision of downtown Los Angeles, completely empty and devoid of any life other than himself and the tall man. Reggie arrives in Mike's car, and they dress, and he dresses up in his ice cream finery.
Time to do battle. Yeah. We dress up like the ice cream man.
Loads up his 4-barrel shotgun and goes looking for action. Mike's gone through the portals again, and he's soon attacked by dwarves. Mike and Jody reappear, and Mike tells Reg not to trust Jody. Reg gives Mike the tuning fork, and when Mike and Jody go back in time, Jebediah figured out how to create dimensional portals and built the machine. So just this regular tinker guy from the Civil War era, brilliant man. He switches it on and goes through, except the tall man comes back out, apparently taking his form as a sort of avatar.
Something happened on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Mike stabs Jody. Another Jody takes Mike to the tall man, who starts to operate on Mike. Well, Mike rings the tuning fork, which freezes the tall man for a moment, enough to get away. The tall man follows Mike back to the desert, where Mike's own killer ball attacks the tall man, the one he built in his car. Yeah. And then the engine explodes, killing him. Hey, it's the end of the tall man.
Yay!
Yay, we'll never see him again.
Almost instantly.
Another one appears through the portal. Yeah, there's
lots of tall men.
There's just no permanently destroying him. Yeah, he's got replicas. Yeah. He always has a replacement. Well, the tall man reaches into Mike's head and pulls out his own silver spear. He takes it, goes back through the portal. Reg promises Mike that he'll be right back, goes into the portal after the tall man. To be continued in part 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that was, 1998.
So there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of fighting, a lot of dwarf fighting, and portal jumping.
So in 1998, they said to be continued.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a 5th movie?
There was.
In 2016. 18 years passed before the next one.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping nobody was holding their breath for that one. So there's a lot of old footage of Mike and the guys filmed back when the first movie came out. There's no other way they could have Mike in this many scenes. This one is really low budget, but the time travel aspect is new and fairly interesting.
Yeah, it was.
We get to see the tall man's origins mostly. More importantly, we learn his ultimate plan, to take all life on Earth back to his dimension as slaves. So it's a lot bigger than just in the first movie when he was just stealing a couple of corpses.
And more science fiction-y as it goes along.
Yeah. This time, they don't even pretend to really kill the tall man at the end, which makes one more sequel entirely possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can kill him.
Well, yeah.
But, there's...
Lots of him.
He
has duplicates.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you... Without going into spoilers, I'll bet you we watched part 5 real soon now.
I bet we do.
Tune back in 7 days.
Yep.
All right, which takes us to our final film of the week called The Empty Man from 2020.
And here our opinions diverge on this one, I believe.
Okay, well this one's on HBO, directed by David Pryor, written by him and also Cullen Bunn. Stars James Badge Dale, Martin Ireland, and Sasha Frolova. 2 hours and 17 minutes, so it's a long honkin' movie. Trailer in the show notes, of course. The spoiler-free zone. It doesn't get boring, but it is way too long.
That's the only criticism I would have of it.
You agree with that part?
It did seem a little too long.
This might have been nice, broken up into 3 one-hour episodes, and it would have been fine. All in one chunk was exhausting. But it is very engaging, and there's a lot going on here to think about.
A lot to digest.
It's good up to the end, which is a totally nonsensical disaster that ruined everything that came before, which was my opinion. Kevin thought the ending was fascinating.
Yes, I did.
All right. So
and emphasizing that spoiler-free, yeah. If you haven't seen it, pause the podcast now and go see it.
Yeah, there are some twists and turns.
This was one that I think I enjoyed even more knowing almost nothing about
Yeah.
going into it and watching it. And I think if I had known, I would have enjoyed it less.
I think if I had
But
known,
now that I do, I want to see it again.
I think if I had known, I would have picked a different movie.
Oh my.
Okay. All right, so we start out in 1995 in Bhutan. A group of hikers walk up the side of a mountain and see a bunch of monks on a truck leaving the monastery. They cross a rickety chain bridge that crosses an immense chasm. After crossing safely, Paul falls into a crevasse. Greg climbs down into the cave after him, and the two find a weird-looking skeleton with too many fingers and arms.
Yeah, it's kind of a shrine.
Yeah, is it a demon? Is it an angel? Is it
Or
just
did
a
they
monster?
assemble it out of
assembled
skeletons?
out of people? Yeah.
It looks almost like it could be more than one human skeleton.
We don't know.
We don't know.
If you touch me, you'll die, whispers Paul. Paul is unharmed from the fall, but he's acting strangely. They continue on their journey, carrying Paul to a house.
And it's kind of funny, too. Paul is played by Aaron Poole, who really resembles Aaron Paul.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought it was Aaron
And the
Paul.
character's name is Paul. Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, we kept thinking, that's not Aaron Paul, is it? No, it just looks like him.
I wonder if
There's
it may be related
no.
somehow that isn't talked about publicly or something, because they
Well,
really look alike.
There's no mention of it in trivia that I see or anything. No,
Yeah.
just a coincidence, I think.
Well, anyway, they go to this house up in the mountains still. A storm rolls in, and they can't figure out what's wrong with Paul. It doesn't seem to be physical. Greg thinks it may be psychological, and he'll be fine in the morning. They find a strange whistle in Paul's sleeve. Did he pick it up down in that cave?
Betcha he did.
The next day, Ruthie looks outside and sees a strange robed figure out there. She runs out to ask for help, but he doesn't look like the helpful type. You ever seen like Death with the cowl and the scythe and all? It kind of looks like that. Angel of Death
in a
kinda
raggedy
guy.
robe. Yeah.
She barely gets back inside and locks the door. That night, Paul takes his jacket and walks off into the darkness while everyone else is asleep. On the third day, they all go out and follow Paul's footprints to him in front of a temple blowing his whistle. Ruthie then pulls out a knife and kills Greg and the other girl.
Yeah, it's almost like he mesmerized her
Yeah.
with his whistle and staring.
She then jumps off a cliff, leaving Paul all by himself on a mountaintop in Bhutan to blow his whistle. Credits roll.
That's a lot to happen before
At this
the
point,
credits.
I'm looking at my watch, and we're 22 minutes in.
Yeah, that was something.
So, yeah, that whole thing that I just read could have been a really good short film.
Yeah, and a standalone.
Pre-credit title sequence. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's obscenely long. All right, now the real movie. We jump ahead to Missouri, 2018. James Lasombra is a sad man who runs a security company. He goes home and has a conversation with Amanda, who tries to cheer him up with positive thinking. Apparently, he used to be a cop, lost his son, and blames himself. Nora, one of James' friends and Amanda's mother, goes into Amanda's room and finds something bad. She calls James. It appears that Amanda has run away. "The empty man made me do it," is scrawled in blood on her bathroom mirror. The police aren't much help since Amanda is over 18. James goes to see Devara, one of Amanda's school friends, and he asks her about the empty man. "It's just some stupid thing. If you go to a bridge after dark and blow into an empty bottle, something will happen," she says.
And something does.
We flash back to a few nights ago when Devara, Amanda, Lisa, Duncan, Meyer, Brendan, and Julianne were all out on a bridge. Amanda tells them about the bottle thing and dares them to try it. On the first night you hear him. Then on the second night you see him, following you. Then on the third night he finds you. And, of course, that little clip is what they play in the trailer. Mm-hmm. Makes the whole thing seem like a Slender Man kind of myth.
Which is, what I was
Which is what I was expecting the whole film would be.
And it's not.
No, not really.
No, not really.
They blow a bottle, then hear something coming after them, and they run away. Devara, while explaining all this, keeps looking around, as she's seen the Empty Man a few times already now. As James tries to track down the other kids, he finds that they're all missing. He goes to the same bridge and finds a bottle in the road. Of course, he blows into it.
Yeah, but it's during the day, so he's probably okay.
He finds 5 of the missing kids under the bridge, hanged. Amanda's not there. The Empty Man made me do it is written there. All right, well, that escalated.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Devara is at the spa and goes into the steam room. A hooded figure stabs her repeatedly with scissors. James gets a severe nosebleed while he talks to the police detective. There have been a couple of leads that point to the Pontifex Institute, so James researches them online. They're a kind of a doomsday cult with many incidences of mass suicide and weirdness. And yet later when we go there, it seems like a really nice place. You'd think the government would crack down on this if it was just a major doomsday cult.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Get the Waco thing going on there.
Yeah.
But no.
No, when it gets there, it just seems kind of weird and new agey.
Yeah. But clean and safe and unregulated.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Nora comes over for a crying session, and obviously these two have a history together. She asks to stay the night, but ends up leaving unhappy. He's not into it. That night, James hears something outside his room. When he looks for the intruder, no one's there. The first night, you hear him. He goes to the Institute. There's a weird questionnaire they want him to fill out, and he follows the group of newbies right past a painting of the strange house from the pre-credit sequence. Little Easter egg. He sits and listens to a talk from Arthur Parsons. He talks about the nothingness of everything, and says this knowledge is brought to you by the Empty Man.
The Empty Man, huh?
He explains himself to James afterwards, but it's a very strange encounter. James goes into the basement in the Institute and finds tunnels. He finds a group of people chanting and blowing into bottles, then he gets thrown out. One of the cultists says he's seen Amanda in a different facility called Camp Elsewhere. James goes to the camp and finds Amanda's file there. He also finds an empty file on himself. He watches a strange videotape about a man with too many fingers. Then he sees dozens of people chanting around a bonfire outside. They all chase after him until he escapes in his car. He goes to warn Nora and get her out of the house for safety. That night, he sees the Empty Man, but it vanishes before anything happens. On the second night,
you see him. Yeah.
The next day, he follows some of the cultists to a hospital room where they all bow before some man on a hospital bed. He then pepper sprays a cultist and interrogates him. The man in the hospital transmits thoughts, some from people, some from the ancients, sometimes from something else. James breaks into the cult's record room and finds his own file, full of things that are impossible for them to know. He asks the nurse at the hospital about the strange patient. It's all very mysterious. He goes into the patient's room, and Amanda is in there. The patient turns out to be Paul, the only survivor from the pre-credit sequence. And up to this point, it's all been very cool. I liked all this.
And this is where it diverged for you.
In the last 10 minutes, I think.
Aww.
James calls Nora, but she doesn't know who he is. Amanda explains Paul isn't going to live long, as a human host can't last very long.
Can't channel that much power without, breaking down.
Yeah. They decided to make a new carrier. Yes, James is that carrier. They made him as a group. He is the Empty Man. Only in existence for 3 days so far. He really was just born yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
She explains, and there's no setup for this. There's no foreshadowing. Just, hey, you're not real. She explains this as...
Well, it all suddenly makes sense, though. Okay.
She explains this as metaphysical jibber-jabber involving the force of will to manifest him. Yeah, all right. Well, James himself was never real. He only thinks he is. However, we've been watching him through the whole film, and there's nothing to indicate that. He goes into the hospital and shoots Paul in the head. As he comes out of the room, the doctors and nurses get on their knees and worship him. Whatever it was inside Paul is in him now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pulled that out of their butt. Who goes on a hike that length without checking the weather forecast beforehand? The severe snowstorm that appeared would not have just suddenly appeared on the map.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah, it was. Pre-credit sequence again. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that was a really neat but crazy long pre-credit sequence, almost as if it were filmed as a short and inserted here as an afterthought.
Kinda, yeah.
Might have been. Yeah. It's long, a long thing, and there's a lot going on here. It's one weird thing after another, and it's all pretty interesting. From the trailer, I was expecting a sort of enhanced Slender Man kind of thing, or even something like The Ring. But there's a lot more going on here than that. It all starts off sensible enough, but the ending is just weird. It was all really good until Amanda explained it all. Then it just went off the rails for me as it devolved into nonsense. I was having a great time for the first 2 hours, but the end made me really feel like I'd wasted a week on it. Kevin, on the other hand, dug the ending and thought it was pretty great.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turns out you were born Tuesday. And you're not real.
Well, and if it made me think of Deckard and Blade Runner too.
Ah, you think you're real?
Who's not? He wasn't. He was. Hatched. The week before or whenever. But if you hatch a person, implant a lifetime of memories, and this detective had all this pain of thought that he believed that his son had died and that he was having an affair, and his wife and son were out driving while he was bonking this other woman, and so he had all this internal pain, and none of that was real.
So how much of the movie was real? Did Nora contact him to find Amanda?
Yes.
Did he have a history with Nora? No.
Well, his existence started at the restaurant, where it was literally his birthday card. He had a free birthday meal that he gave to the waitress.
Yeah.
And that was in his file later.
Yeah.
That had been part of the fake, too.
But he spent half the movie talking off and on with Nora, and at the end, Nora didn't have any idea who he was.
No.
How'd that happen? Was she in on it?
Yes.
Didn't seem to be.
I think she was in on it, yeah.
Huh.
She was part of it, yeah. She was part of the call.
Well, that's our show for this week. Thanks for joining us. Stop in during the week at our website, horrorguys.com. Sign up for that email. It's a good thing. Lots of good bonus stuff in there. I'll bet there's going to be a couple of Vincent Price films for the next bonus thing.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. Get ready for next week where we'll be watching some more classics. We're going to watch 4 more horror films, including Phantasm V.
Where they
Ravager.
wrap things up.
Yeah.
Ravager.
And some other films that will be determined.
Okay.
We've been watching a bunch of things. Just got to figure out what to put on.
Yep.
Phantasm V, though, we're going to get that
one
knock
for
that
sure.
one out.
Yeah, concluding the series.
Yeah. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And guess when we'll see you?
Next week.
Next week.
See ya.
See ya.